So we're going to compare relative and absolute maximums and minimums using these two pictures. I did choose to do them in different colors. You don't have to. You do need to try and get them to look as similar as possible because they're supposed to be the same thing, the same shape, but with a couple different things on them. So copy the graphs down. What I did first was I plotted the key points that I have labeled and then connected the dots as smoothly as possible. So looking at the differences. Okay, so without getting into any math, let's just talk about things that are different. The first thing I notice is this graph on the left has arrows, which means it's going to continue left and down, which is here, and it's going to continue right and up, which is here. Looking at what I will refer to as the red graph, I noticed stops. So it's got a solid point here and a solid point here. So it does not continue to go up or down on the ends. It's going to stop here at -5, -5, and it's going to stop here at 6, 5. Other than that, those are the only visual, obvious differences. So now let's talk relative max, relative min, absolute max, and absolute min. So again, this one on the left keeps going up and down. The one on the right stops. So looking at the blue graph, relative max and relative min. So relative max is a high point or a peak, but not the absolute tallest point. So the obvious top should be -3, 4. It's not the top of the graph because there's parts of the graph that's higher than it. So it would be a relative max at -3, 4. Let's get that in here, -3, 4. Relative min, same thing. You're looking for a valley. And we've got one right here. It's not the lowest point, but it's a valley in the graph. So that's going to be 2, -4. Absolute max is a point of a peak that's the highest in the whole graph. Well, -3, 4 is a relative max, so we need something higher than that. Well, the graph just keeps on going up from there. So this graph does not have an absolute maximum. Same thing with your relative maximum, or relative minimum. The relative minimum was here. There's not another valley lower than that. So the absolute minimum also does not exist. Here's where these two graphs are going to differ. So as we said before, relative max is just a peak. And we have one of those peaks again at -3, 4. Relative min, again, is a valley. And as we said before, 2, -4 would be a relative min. Now we're talking absolute maximum point. So if we take a look at this graph, there is a point that's higher than -3, 4. The highest this graph goes is here at 6, 5. So 6, 5 would be an absolute max because that is where your graph stops at the top. Absolute minimum is the lowest point here, and that lowest point here is -5, -5. So in summary, relative maximum is a peak or a high value. Relative min is a valley or a low value. Absolute max is the highest point your graph reaches, and absolute min is the lowest point that your graph reaches. The examples page is another worksheet. If you have a printer for my distance learning students, I suggest you print the worksheet. If you don't have a printer, then you're going to want to copy down the graphs with the key points, just like you did on the first set of notes. I do not have pictures or an example of what you should be copying down, so you're going to want to make sure that you make it look as similar to the first set of notes as possible.